said, some of you are going to be annoyed at the way the screen is being shown, but it's my fault because I want you to see what the next ones will be. So in other words, I want to keep you excited that it's not a one-shot deal. I won't always do this, but I'm so excited about this program. And in fact, there are 3 weeks in a row, 2 weeks, and then the third week will be about how to take good photographs. So even if you're not going to Greece, I suggest you check in for that as well. But I don't always tell Nessa to please join me, but Nessa's online today, and I want to thank her for coming because she knows Cycladic art is the single biggest influence on my work. I do care a lot about Bezalel, major influence on me, but Cycladic art is art of the Cyclades. And I'm fascinated. I do believe we were all at Sinai. I don't know if we were there in spirit or whatever, but I always think so intensely about what art must have looked like 5,000 years ago. And Cycladic art is 5,000 years old when we became a people around that time. And I'm so interested that every artist is influenced by other artists. If you get a chance, my close friend, he's not alive anymore, Jack Whitten, has a gorgeous show up at MoMA right now. And if I could have curated another show on all the people that influenced him, I would love to do something like that. And I took some people to see the show and talked about it. So today we're going to see who is influenced by Cycladic art. Just a few great artists. So we're going to start by showing a few rare videos that I put together. And then we're going to look at these artists and put them together with Cycladic pieces. So let's go, Ari, and share your screen. And then we're going to start with the first videos on the info. So let's go to the next video, and we're gonna go to the first video, the next screen, Ari, and then you'll press on the videos. You go to that and you press on the top one. Here we go.
Just give me a moment to make sure they work because they are not activating the second.
Oh, they did activate when we prepared it. So I'm going to talk to you while he's getting it ready. So we're going to start with looking at different artists, including, here we go. This is fun. Here we go.
This piece is very rare because it's one of the largest examples that exists, and that's certainly the largest figure that I have seen myself and handled. Cycladic sculptures are very mysterious marble figures made in the Cyclades Islands in Greece. They appeared at the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC. These sculptures are enigmatic because we don't know for sure what they were made for. They were found in tombs, but they were also found on the ground. We don't know how they were made because tools were never found. This particular figure dates from the Speeders period. The main characteristic is this very special and specific lyre shape for the head, the rounded of the shoulders. They get much more angular in later periods. And then the fact that the legs had a little separation in the middle. That's when the sculptors were becoming more and more adventurous and trying to show off actually their skills. The ancient sculptor from the Cycladic Islands would use a set of proportions, a set of rules. So the head would need to be the same size as the upper body, and which would be the same size as the upper legs, and the same size again as the lower legs. They represent both male and females, but more frequently females. As this example, the figure is holding her belly. There is probably a link with maternity. Something that is always surprising to think about for ancient classical sculptures made of marble is that they were painted. The artists, I call them artists, maybe they were considering themselves artisans, wanted to create a lifelike image. Eyes would be painted, sometimes the hair, Sometimes the pigment have been absorbed by the stone, and that's why we call them ghost paint. And so you can guess the color of her hair. We see them now as being very simple, but 4,600 years ago, to achieve something like this is just a mastery.
So the reason I show you these videos is I want you to hear different voices of different people. So the next one is I want to show you how you could make a Cycladic art piece. And this is a beautiful little video I found. Ari, you go to the next video. We're going to see 3 videos. Then I talk a lot, and then we see, back and forth with videos. But this is so much fun. Watch this. This is one of my favorite little videos I've seen. It's 1.5 minutes. Okay. So why did I start that way? We can go back is because I want you to understand that the images that are made are not that complicated to be made. The idea of making them is what's fascinating. And then watching how many artists are influenced by that and taking those ideas and making it their own. We're going to start, and I'm hoping many of you know who she is, Barbara Hepworth. You know that I want to not, oh, I'm so happy, Beverly. I love you for shaking your head. You're so nice. Thank you. I wanted to start with her because she's not the most famous of the people. Everyone knows, like I could have been not such a good lecturer and I could have brought in Brancusi and Giacometti and everyone said, oh, of course, of course. But what about Arp? And what about Henry Moore? And what about Barbara Hepworth? That's why I'm here, because I'm going to show you some of the other ones who not everyone would say like, oh my God, that's exactly right. So let's look at Barbara Hepworth. And this is a piece of hers. It's about a head, and you'll see how she is influenced by a piece in a museum. And let's go to the next one, Ari.
So yeah, before I move on, there was a question which we learned about in other lectures about early art, which was the color. So were these Cycladic art, did they originally have color, or were they always
Yes,
kind
she
of stuff?
said that. I wanted you to hear it from somebody else other than me, because I'm always nervous that everyone says, Toby, how do you know? Did you ever see it? So yes, you can see ghosts of pigment in there. So they were painted, but the truth of the matter is this artist, I'm raising my hand, I like it better as the plain marble. And you'll see that all the artists I'm showing you today are looking at them as without the painted color. The other thing that's very important to understand is that there are a lot of forgeries because all these famous artists like Modigliani, people didn't care if they were original. They would buy copies and you would find in their studios, and they were not originals. All right, let's go to Barbara Hepworth's beautiful little video. We're not going to see the whole thing because it's too long and I'm scared about time. So I just want to show a little of it. It's my most fun is preparing these lectures of finding the right videos for you. I wish I had an hour and a half, but I don't. And I don't want to waste another minute. So Ari, if you, we're not seeing it, Ari. We're just seeing her name so far. You got to get off and get back on. I hope you're having fun already. This is one of my favorite lectures. Yeah, here it
You
is.
see it now?
Yep.
Hello, I'm Alison, and I would like to talk to you about this piece of artwork that was made by one of my favourite sculptors, Barbara Hepworth. She was born in 1903 in Wakefield in Yorkshire, and she loved as a child travelling through the rolling hills of the Yorkshire landscape. Later in life, she moved down to St Ives in Cornwall, where again she was surrounded by rugged rock formations that had been sculpted by the sea. These landscapes and natural forms inspired and influenced a lot of her work, as did the human form. This piece is carved from a single block of marble, and she would have had to carve this by hand. In my own art practice, I've had the opportunity to do stone carving, so I thought I'd bring along today my hand tools to show you, so you can see the sorts of tools that Barbara would have used to make this piece. So this is my mallet, which is a form of hammer, and a chisel. So you would use different weight chisels and hammers, and she would have literally had to carve away all the excess material in order to release the form that we see before us. She is also pierced right the way through, so there's a hole that goes right the way through this sculpture. And you've got a small aperture at the front, but if you were to walk around the back, you would see it opens up to a much larger one behind. She has also created this wonderful smooth surface, which again, she would have had to polish for some time with different emery papers to get this really smooth surface. So a lot of physical effort and time has gone into making this. She's also chosen the material that it sits on. The base is made from wood, and the contrast between the two natural materials is really lovely. Wood is another material that Barbara Hepworth worked in sculpture many times. This piece is abstract in form, but she has chosen to give it a name, and it's called Minoan Head. So it makes us think of a head and perhaps of an eye, but also because it is abstract, you can bring your own thoughts to the piece. When she was at the Royal College of Art in London, she would have visited museum collections as well for inspiration. And the Minoan head is from an ancient Greek civilization, Minoan, on the island of Crete. And you've probably heard of King Minos and the Minotaur. So she would have looked at pieces from antiquity. And here in the Fitzwilliam Museum, we also have a large collection of Greek antiquity. And my friend Jenny is going to introduce you to a piece that's in the Fitzwilliam Museum's collection of Greek antiquities. So you can have a look at something that's similar to what Barbara would have seen.
You might be surprised to learn that this pretty modern-looking figurine is actually about 4,000 to 5,000 years old. It dates to about 2,700 to 2,400 BC and comes from a group of Greek islands called the Cyclades. It's carved from marble, and its maker would have cut away at pieces of the stone with a chisel until he was left with this basic shape before polishing and smoothing the marble. We don't know a lot about what this type of figurine was used for, but we do know that most of the figurines found represent the female body. Instead of being a realistic representation of the human form, these sculptures reduce the body to just a few key parts: head, neck, torso, arms usually folded across the body, and legs. But I think there's something very beautiful and elegant about these simple forms. Barbara Hepworth had a great love of Greece and the sculpture produced by this ancient civilization. It's very likely that she was inspired by the simple forms of figurines like these and the other ancient Greek sculpture that she had seen when she created Minoan Head, the marble sculpture you've just seen with Ali. Think back to that sculpture Can you see how a stylized figurine like this might have influenced Barbara Hepworth?
Okay, so now we're going to look at some of Barbara Hepworth's work, and then we're going to look at some of them next to the Cycladic work. So why am I so fascinated by this? So I think Barbara Hepworth is one of the great artists of the 20th century. Ari, can we get back to the pictures and show the first Barbara Hepworth sculpture? And I wanted you to see not all the sculptures I'm showing you of hers are stone, and some of them are bronze. And the first one I'm showing you, take a look at that. Now, I look at it and I think to myself, wow, does that look like it could be a necklace? Does that look like it could, I mean, because of its abstraction, it could be so many different things, but I also could see a figure in there. Now, you have to remember that every artist is influenced by other artists, but doesn't want to look exactly like it. So I want to show you one that looks less like Cycladic, but you can see it. Go to the next one, and I look at those and I go, oh my God, did she love looking at Cycladic pieces? And that's all marble, but she sees again that she puts it on a piece of wood. And if you look at this, you can also think later of a Brancusi that I'm showing you, because you can see that here the stone is more stylized. It doesn't obviously have a front and a back. It looks almost like it's a heavy piece of cardboard, and it's cut out, but they very often have a hole in there. Now, if you remember in the first video you saw of the Cycladic artist, they showed you it was a very big thing for them to have a space between the legs, because they wanted to show you how the two legs were different. Here, she's sometimes putting a hole in the middle or on the top or on the side. But what's so beautiful is seeing how they interrelate with each other. Let's get to the next one. I know I'm going quickly, but now I'm in love with this one again, because I love the way it looks almost like a golem. It also looks like a figure stretching up and looking up. And I love that she has the double bases that it's sitting on. Now, the Cycladic pieces, I'm not showing you that this week, but I will show you one either next week or in 2 weeks that has a harp player. And you'll see that sometimes you have something that's more three-dimensional. But I love the way the space is open. And again, because she doesn't have to copy everything and make it all in stone, she's doing that in bronze again. Let's go to the next one. The next one is the one that so reminds me of Cycladic art, and I'm speechless. I love how she cuts it on an angle. It's very smooth on the outside, and that is why I showed you that video. Remember, I'm using every minute of my time, and to put in a 1.5-minute video and show you the early parts of the video when that person showed you what Barbara Hepworth's tools would have been like, I want you to understand how these things are made and how you use certain things to smooth it down. How this piece, I wish I could have it turn around, looks very different in the back than it does in the front. Let's get to the next one. I know I'm going quickly and I'm sorry. This one again is so beautiful, and that's a polished bronze. And if the Cycladic artists at that time could have done it, I think they would have loved that, because you'll see by the way, Barbara Hepworth loves doing openings that on one side look smaller and the other side looks larger. It's so romantic and so beautiful. And I think the fact that she polished it so high is very different than her other works. Now we're going to go to one of my all-time favorite artists named Modigliani, a very important Jewish artist. He was very well known for being a painter and a sculptor, but I found this one video that shows both of them. An amazing artist who died tragically young. You can see here, he was very young. I mean, scary young.
Before we move on, there was a question of whether Barbara Hepworth was well known during her day, or whether she, like other artists, got her acclaim after her death.
All right. So Barbara Hepworth in England was very well respected, very well respected. Her husband was a little more well known than her. His name was Ben Nicholson. I think she's a better artist than him. Jane, I love seeing your head shaking. I'm so happy you're in my video. and you can attest to them that I prepare well. Would you tell them that I do prepare my homework? But she was very well respected in England. And she is one of those artists who, even though she was a woman, made it during her lifetime, but is now light years more famous. And this, for one, me, I'm raising my hand again. I've been a groupie of hers, and I'll tell you a funny story. I was bought by a museum in Wichita, Kansas, and they bought my work, and they said, why don't you go to the garden, and where do you want to be placed? And I said, simple. I've been there once before. I want to be next to the Barbara Hepworth. And he said to me, wow, you don't care about the Henry Moore? I said, nope. You don't care about, I don't want to mention the other artist's name. I said, nope. I want to be next to a Barbara Hepworth. I think she is a great artist. I've always liked her. If you don't know her, do your homework. She is amazing. All right, now let's go to
Hold on. One more. People ask, where do you go see her collection? Like, where can you see?
In England. You know what? I'm so happy you're asking. There is a Barbara Hepworth Foundation, and they do great stuff. You can see her work in England. Google her, and you'll see a lot of her work. She does beautiful work with stone and metal. Oh, the Met has you know what? Ari, send me a link to remind me, and I'll send you some of the great places that own her work. She's in a lot of good collections.
And then the people asked, generally the dimensions of her pieces.
They could be all sizes. They're 6 feet. They're 4 feet. The piece I'm next to her is a 6 foot piece, but she does all sizes. I mean, not little baby ones. I mean, she does like 2 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet. She's a grown up. She's really good. Now we're getting to somebody I absolutely adore, so underrated, and now it's finally selling for over $1 million.
Okay, just tell me if you can see. Can you see the screen with the video?
Yeah, I'm very proud of you. Go ahead.
On display in Philadelphia, an exhibit honoring the genius of the Italian master Amedeo Modigliani.
Jewish
Serena
genius.
Altschul is our guide.
Narrow faces, haunting eyes, elongated necks, all well-known characteristics of an Amedeo Modigliani masterpiece. Less well-known, the brains behind that brush.
It's not that often that you get to be in front of a Modigliani without the glass in front of it.
And without the frame.
Yes, so there it is.
Barbara Buckley is a chief conservator at the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, where a team of curators and conservators are using new technologies to unearth old secrets from beneath the canvas. Their findings are part of an exhibition, Modigliani Up Close.
One of the really fun things was looking at some of the early paintings where he was painting over canvases that had already been painted upon. Sometimes his own canvases, sometimes canvases that had been painted on by a different artist.
Buckley found Modigliani often incorporated those underdrawings into his finished pieces.
So he's using them in really creative ways. He's allowing some of the nuances of the color of the painting below to be integrated into the painting on the surface.
One of the discoveries of this exhibition was that Modigliani used a very wide and varied palette of more than 20 colors. We had previously thought he only used about 5.
Cindy Kang is a curator with the Barnes. She says the artist fools the eye into thinking parts of the figure are monochromatic.
You can see in her bangs, it looks like she just has dark hair, but there's pops of blue and of red.
Modigliani, as Italians say, was born in Livorno, Italy in 1884 to an Italian Jewish family. His parents encouraged his passion for the arts. Modigliani's mother educated her son by taking him to visit cultural institutions all over the country.
He did have a very classical training, and you can still see that. It's all very, very meticulously planned.
In 1906, he moved to the center of the art world, Paris. He was a member of the School of Paris, a group of artists living in the City of Light. But he didn't see all of his contemporaries as inspiration.
Picasso and Braque were developing Cubism. They were working with collage. They were really interested in interrogating pictorial structure. Modigliani was interested in something else. And so this is why he was so dedicated to the figure.
Modigliani painted and sculpted, the latter practice lasting only a few years, but becoming consequential to his method.
When we think of Modigliani and his signature style, it's the faces, the long necks. Where did that come from?
You need to go back to his sculpture. He was getting his blocks from construction sites in Paris. The blocks that Modigliani was using to sculpt heads were very long rectangular blocks.
Would he pay for them?
We don't know exactly. Maybe he stole them in the cover of the night. Maybe he was paying for them. We don't know exactly.
Amedeo Modigliani died in 1920 at the age of 35 from tuberculosis. And while his career may have been fleeting, his legacy was anything but.
Is everything that's going to be looked at?
Oh, there's always more.
There's more.
There's always more. Yeah, this is just the beginning.
Okay. So before you ask me why I showed you him, if he's more well known as a painter, that's exactly why I showed him to you. Because I wanted you to see, and I don't mind if you quote me on this, I believe his long necks comes from Cycladic art. I think, oh, thank you, Alan, for shaking your head. Oh, I'm happy that I'm not alone. I look at them, and now let me show you the first. And by the way, I'm not showing you a lot of Cycladic art until the very end. I'm hoping you stay with me until the end, because I wanted you to see. I want you to see the influence in Cycladic art before you see more and more Cycladic art pieces. And when you go to the museum, I'm begging you, I wish I could take a time capsule and be with you, because I want you to look at them and you'll go like, oh my God, I now see exactly what Tobi meant. So let's look at the first one. Now, look at them. Now, interesting as said, Modigliani did not put paint on these stone pieces, but he is looking at Cycladic art without any paint on it, and that's what influences him. Look at the nose structure. Now, you'll say to me, but Tobi, he has his eyes different, and I will answer, he's not copying it. He's being influenced by it, and that is what fascinates me so much. Look at the next image, which is a painting, and look at that neck, and look at that face. Look at that nose, and if you don't see Cycladic art there, I don't know what my problem is. Look at the hair. You remember it said that they would paint that hair on there? That hair almost looks like a toupee or a wig. That neck is very, very long, and the tilt of the head, if you see in the Cycladic pieces, you'll see very often the heads are tilted back a little. So this is not totally realistic, but it gives you an inkling of how somebody, and by the way, a very, very important thing to tell you, he had copies of Cycladic art in his studio. He did have it, and there's proof of that because they found it. They weren't originals, they were copies, and I told you many artists would go to Greece and get copies. Nobody cared if it was an original or not. Let's get to the next one. Look at the next one. I love that next one. And you look at it from the side, and you look at the chin and the head. We have 4 or 5 pieces of his I want to show you quickly because I'm watching my time. Go to the next one. All right, right there. I wanted to show you one where he has different than Cycladic art. He has the back of the hair in the back. So it's flat until the back. Go to the next one. And that one, it becomes much more. See that is so much more like a Cycladic piece. I'm speechless. And go to the next one. I showed you quite a few because I wanted you to see it's not a one-off. Look at the elongation there too. Now remember, when they would paint the Cycladic pieces, they would put the eyes in there. Now, the next artist I'm showing you is Brancusi. I am a little sad about Brancusi because Brancusi does not give credit to Cycladic art. He says he was very influenced by African art. I don't care what anyone says. I think he was so, I don't even know what to say. I feel like crying. If I was his friend, I'd say, come on, why don't you give credit to the Cycladic pieces, people? But at that time, looking at African art was considered more chic. All right, now let's look at this video. It's amazing. I hope you're enjoying these because I'm loving it. And every artist has like 30 different videos. I picked the ones that fit with my lecture. All right, let's see this. This is...
Constantin Brancusi was a Romanian-born sculptor who is considered one of the most important figures in the development of modern art. His work is known for its simplicity and abstraction, and it has had a profound influence on the art world. One of the defining characteristics of Brancusi's art is his use of abstraction. He sought to strip away all unnecessary elements and to distill his sculptures down to their essence. Another key aspect of Brancusi's work is his use of repetition. He often created multiple versions of the same sculpture, each one slightly different from the last. This repetition allowed him to explore different variations of the same idea and to refine his forms over time. For example, his series of sculptures of birds in flight, which he worked on for many years, show how he progressively simplified the forms to achieve a sense of movement and grace. Brancusi's work also has a spiritual dimension, as he was deeply influenced by the beliefs of his native Romania. He often incorporated symbols and motifs from Romanian folk art and mythology into his sculptures. An important aspect of Brancusi's art is his use of materials. He worked primarily in bronze and marble, and often used polished surfaces to give his sculptures a sense of smoothness and fluidity. He also experimented with different patinas, which are chemical treatments that change the color and texture of the metal. By using different patinas, Brancusi was able to create sculptures that appeared to change color depending on the lighting and the viewing angle. This added an extra layer of interest and complexity to his work. Brancusi's art also has a strong connection to the human form, despite his abstraction of it. He often depicted the human figure in his sculptures, but he always sought to capture the essence of the human form rather than its physical details. Brancusi's art is a masterful blend of simplicity, abstraction, and a deep understanding of the human form. His use of materials, repetition, and spiritual influences all contribute to his legacy as one of the most important sculptors of the 20th century. His work continues to inspire and influence contemporary artists and designers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please...
So I find this a little difficult that he does not mention. I mean, in Hebrew, it's called muvan me'elav, that it's so obvious. They talk about simplicity, about the figure, and I'm going, hello, please mention. And I think the reason is that I think he borrowed so heavily from Cycladic art that he didn't want to call attention to it. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise, I don't know why, because every artist my age or younger will say to you, wow, those Brancusis look so much like Cycladic art. Now, if you want to see a lot of beautiful Cycladic art, the Met has, on the first floor, they have a whole section that's eventually going back to the Cycladic Art Museum in Athens. But look at these pieces. I showed you like 8 pictures, and every one of them makes me think so. I would like to do a show of a Cycladic piece next to a Brancusi. So let's look at these bunch of them that I put together for you. And the idea of repetition, oh, I forgot to say that. That is Cycladic art, because they would repeat over and over again. Now, that first video, they said they didn't necessarily call themselves artists, they were artisans. And you did that, let's say, if you were going to, please God, have a baby, or you wanted to have a baby, or you wanted to remember somebody who had died. So there were many religious reasons for these pieces being in existence. Let's look at these pieces. I'm watching my time, Ari. I know I want 5 minutes for just looking at the Cycladic at the end. So let's look at these. Now, again, do you notice that all of the artists I'm showing you today who are doing figures will always have the nose? Not always have the eyes, but the nose is always there. This is quite beautiful. And this is another artist that I love his pedestals. His pedestals are gorgeous, and he uses the pedestal as being part of the work. And that is not Cycladic. That is Brancusi. Let's look at the next one. And his idea, and by the way, I have to be honest, I'm very influenced by him by looking at, you see what he does? He puts the head on top of a cube, and then a part of something else, and then another shaped piece as the base. And it makes the piece look very different. I'm in the middle of doing a big commission in New Harmony, Indiana, and I'm thinking about what the pedestal should look like. So look at these faces. Look at how different they look. They all have that nose, but they all don't have anything else. Let's go to the next one. That's his famous flight in bird. I wanted you to see those, and those are the two lovers in the front, and right in the front, that little figure. I love that one of the two figures embracing. But again, look at how different each piece looks because of the base that it's on. Let's go to the next one. And that one is the one that I think is the most obviously borrowed heavily from Cycladic art. It's just a beautiful piece. And the last one is what I think he's most well known for. And the Met owns one, the Modern owns one. They're in many, many museum collections. It's called Bird in Flight. And it's just so beautiful. Put your hand over the bottom. It would not look nearly as interesting if it didn't have that cylinder on the bottom. So his idea of simplicity and beauty, and the fact, I don't know if you know him, but you should write down his name because I think he's one of the greatest artists of our time. Morandi just did paintings of bottles. Oh my God, Jane, we're on the same page. You were thinking of that too. Yes. I want her to get a gold star, Ari. I see her face on the top. Please give her a gold star, because he's another artist that just did the same thing over and over again. Let's get a few artists who do that. The opposite of that is Picasso, always trying something new. Modigliani is another person that all his figures look similar. Soutine, another artist who always looks the same. And if you want to go to see a beautiful show right now, Clay. I love that. The Paul Clay heads. Thank you. Thank you. Also, you should think about, there's a great show of Ben Shahn on right now at the Jewish Museum. And you can look at those works and see the works. And there's certain artists, if you look at Max Beckmann, you'll always know a Max Beckmann face. Or you look at Matisse, Gauguin. You'll always know a Gauguin face. You'll always know this is an interesting little aside. I'm not a biggest fan of Renoir, but you can always spot a Renoir even quicker than you can find a Monet or a Manet. Renoir's heads are always the same. All right, now let's go to Giacometti, one of the two biggest influences, sculptors on me. And you'll see this. This is a bit of a stretch, but everyone agrees he was influenced by him. Can the names of the artists that... All right, this is a short one, but a very good one. And this is done by Sotheby's. We saw one Christie's
and one Sotheby's. In the years after World War II, Giacometti taps into this scene in Paris that's very active with existentialists and modernists, wholly new idioms. And Giacometti wants to define a new image for a new age. He grapples with a society of anxiety, and his sculptures portray that. They are a reaction to this society in a post-war world. Giacometti proves himself decades just prior to World War II as a very talented image maker, and works first in the Cubist idiom and then develops into a Surrealist idiom. After World War II, he creates an entirely new visual vocabulary focused on the relationship between the figure and space. La Place is Giacometti's first multi-figural sculpture. There are 5 figures in the sculpture, 4 male figures and 1 female. The male figures are in motion, and the female figure is in a passive state. The ambiguity of the sculpture is really one of its most successful moments. You stand in front of it, you come at different angles, you look at these figures, You try to read what's on their faces or why they're in this city square, and there is no answer. Giacometti constantly comes back to that space for its sense of both community and then its sense of isolation, because even in a city atmosphere, you also have this sense of the figure not connecting. Laplace reveals the emergence of the walking man, which ends up being a very important motif throughout his entire career. We also have the standing female nude, one of Giacometti's other important motifs, which will lead into his Femme de Venise series and many others. Laplace really is the genesis of Giacometti's fully mature and unique oeuvre. Femme de Venise was created for 2 exhibitions at the Kunsthal in Bern and the Venice Biennale in 1955. He creates a series of plasters that are actually exhibited in both locations, and from those plasters pulls out his favorite models and has them cast in bronze. These are a series of standing female nudes ranging in size, ranging also on this continuum from more naturalistic to quite abstract. This particular one has a delicacy and a detail to it that makes it one of the strongest models from the series. Laplace and the Femme de Venise both come through Pierre Matisse. Pierre Matisse launches an exhibition in 1948 of Giacometti's work. It is the first solo exhibition that Giacometti has in 15 years. 2 other works in the sale at Sotheby's are sold directly from the Pierre Matisse Foundation, which was a legacy of Pierre Matisse and his wife, Tana Matisse. These Giacomettis went right from the artist to the Pierre Matisse Gallery to the foundation, which is a stellar provenance that we don't always see, so it's quite exciting. Annette is one of Giacometti's most important models. She's his wife. They have a very tumultuous and close relationship. This sculpture is created at a time when Giacometti is rekindling his love for Annette. The year before he sculpts this particular model, he has met Caroline, a model and then lover. In the year after he's met Caroline, he comes back to Annette and creates this series of incredibly naturalistic, arresting images of Annette. He draws out this gaze from her, what it feels like to stand in front of her and have her look at you. Another instance in which Giacometti's looking at Annette. He's not looking to capture her in portraiture in this case. He's looking to attenuate her figure into an almost mannerist sense of figural portrayal. Relates very closely, of course, to the Femme de Venise series, but there's a little bit more naturalism in her face, a bit more detail, so that we can just see that it could be based upon Annette. In this painting from 1950, Giacometti portrays his studio. This painting is spectacular in the sense of motion and abstraction around the sculpture in the middle, and the way that Giacometti has this laser focus on this bust in the middle of the painting. When you view it next to, for instance, one of the sculptures, there's this similar working away at the surface. Giacometti was best known as a sculptor, but his oils really grow out of that aesthetic and inform his sculptures just as the sculptures inform the paintings.
So, I'm very happy that I saw someone write in the comment they were happy I put in Giacometti, and let me tell you why I put in Giacometti. First of all, there's a beautiful quote by Giacometti that I borrow all the time. It's not what I leave, it's what I take away. And he says very often in his writings that he tried to take away as much work without destroying the piece. And you can see how thin they are. And they're very complicated to make. They're very, very thin. The other thing I'd like to tell a story that I've heard this story. Nessa, you will love this story. Apparently Giacometti, people would come to do a sitting for Giacometti, and he never thought he was finished. And one day this mega businessman from Switzerland comes to the house, and he's there for like a week. And he finally, when Giacometti goes up to get some water, says to Mrs. Giacometti, this amazing woman that he paints over and over again and sculpts over and over again, he said, you know, I got to go to the city. I can't keep staying here. And she said, when exactly do you have to leave? And he said, like, I don't know the time. I'm bad at that, but I know the story is real because Michael Brenson, the art historian, told me the story. He wrote his doctoral thesis on Brancusi and met the whole family. And she said like 2 o'clock. And at 12 o'clock, she comes in the room and says to him, the guy's got to leave in 2 hours. You got to be finished. And he gets finished in 1 hour and 45 minutes. And the guy on the way out says to his wife, if I had told you this 3 days ago, would he have been finished? And she goes, I don't know, but I'm very happy you didn't ask then. So, you know, he was one of those people that worked over and over and over work until he had to let it go. The reason I wanted you to see this is the most emotional of all the sculptors I'm showing you today. And I wanted you to see that you can be influenced. He, by the way, talks about Cycladic art and what a big influence on it he was. But it's the elongation of the necks. It's the elongations of everything. That's one of the reasons. And also the way the face structure is done. So that's why I put him in there. So now let's look at just a few of them. So that first one, that's him in his studio. Let's go to the next one. That one is just such a beautiful portrait. And look at that neck and look at the face. Get rid of the body, and then you'll see the Cycladic part. Now looking at the walking men and the walking figures, that is very, very based on that very frontal approach. It's very stick figure. But look at the next one. That to me is so much about that, but emotional. He's using emotion, but that long neck and the head, you see it's tilted back a little, and there are ears there. And look at the next one again. You can see that elongation. And here, very different than anyone else I showed you, the base is bronze also. It's all one piece, the figure and the thing that's holding it up. Now, somebody would say to me, well, of course, Toby, you had to make a big base. The thing would have fallen over. And the answer is, you are correct. Without that big base, that piece could never have stayed standing. And the artist knew that. Let's go to the, look, I love that one again. Very frontal. And that's with all the Cycladic art pieces are very, very frontal. And now we're going to go to the next artist, which is the least well-known of the artists I'm showing you. Much less well-known than everyone else. His name is Hans Arp. If you know Arp, can you raise your hand, or at least anyone know? Oh, wow. Thank you. Wow. Shakarui. Great. Oh, thank you. This is a great class. Well, I'm happy you're enjoying it. I love that you're enjoying it. You can ask Ari or Nessa. This is one of my favorite lectures to prepare because I could put in all the artists I like. There's no hierarchy. No one's asking me who sells for 5 million, who sells for 400,000, who sells for 2. These are all great artists who are influenced by Cycladic art. I would love to have put myself in there, but I don't have the chutzpah to do it. All right, now we're going to go to art. Ari, it's your turn again. And then we'll do Henry Moore, and then I'm going to show you a video of just Cycladic art in the museum because I wanted to show it to you that way. If I showed you the other way, you wouldn't have paid attention as much.
The Nature of Art presents a compelling new look at an artist whose experimental approach to creation, radical rethinking of traditional art forms, and sense of collaboration resonate with the wide-ranging character of art today. Over a career spanning more than 6 decades, Jean Art produced a remarkably influential body of work in a rich variety of materials and formats. A founder of the Dada movement and a pioneer of abstraction, he developed a vocabulary of curving organic forms that moved fluidly between abstraction and representation and became a common point of reference for several generations of artists. The show brings together more than 80 objects, including sculptures in plaster, wood, bronze, and stone, as well as painted wood reliefs, collages, drawings, textiles, and illustrated books. The Nature of Art, on view at the Nasher Sculpture Center through January 6, 2019. Learn more at nashersculpturecenter.org.
So now we're going to look at some individual pieces, and then I'm going to put one of the Cycladic pieces next to another one, and you'll be blown away. I hope you'll be blown away. So look at that first one. That is done in stone. He does a lot of stone, a lot of bronze. Many people can mix him up with early Calder, but that's him working in his studio. That is such a beautiful, look at those. Go back to him in the studio. You'll see those bigger figures, and you can already see how the figure is part of it, but he abstracts it quite a bit. Now we'll go to that first one. I wanted to start with one that's really abstract. And again, it looks like a woman's body. Do you think of, yes, definitely, definitely. He's not as well known as Barbara Hepworth, but they were during the same period. I think more people compare Henry Moore to Barbara Hepworth. I love art, but he's not nearly as well known as Barbara Hepworth or Henry Moore. Look at that next one. The next one is like the money shot. Now you cannot tell me that he was not looking at that Cycladic piece when he did the other one. It's like so obvious. And I love that. I don't like that. I love that. You understand when I say an artist borrows from another artist, this is what I mean. It doesn't look the same, but it looks like, you know, wow, I saw this. Wow, I want to do something. Same as the Barbara Hepworth that we saw in the beginning. You look at something and you say, you know, I can do something great with this. And it won't look exactly like that, but it's my seed of emotion. You know that Nessa's a writer and she loves looking at ancient Jewish texts and weaving it into her writing. So it becomes an element of it. And I think of the Mishkan, the Holy of Holies, and think about the angels in there. And those things influence me. And I like watching artists who most probably went to Greece, saw one or two of these pieces, took them back because they were copies, and then used them in their studio as ways to look at things. Let's go to the next one. That next one again is so, I don't even know what to say. I love it so much. And yes, Eli Nadelman, if anyone thinks of Eli Nadelman, that's another artist who I think was very influenced more by art than by Cycladic art, but both of them as well. Let's go to the next one. A gem. And by the way, that's all bronze, and you have to understand there's a pole going in to keep it on an angle. Now, most of the stuff you're going to see at the Cycladic Art Museum are on little metal stands because they weren't made necessarily to be standing up. Now we're going to end with the last artist we're seeing was Henry Moore. And everyone talks about Henry Moore and Cycladic art. That's not a secret. That you didn't need me for.
Just takes a second for me to get to the site.
You're doing good. You're doing great, Ari. We love having you here. I'm hoping you're enjoying it. Henry Moore, I'll give you a great quote that I use of Henry Moore's all the time. Henry Moore said, if a sculpture doesn't look different from front and back and sides, you're not making a good enough sculpture. And I agree with him. A sculpture should, unless you're doing an Egyptian, well, Egyptians had the sculptures against the wall, so they never cared about that. But if you're in the 20th century, a sculpture should look different all the way around.
This year at the Henry Moore Studios and Gardens, we are showcasing 21 works outdoors, and all of these works have been selected with this theme of vitality in mind. And vitality is this word that Henry Moore uses frequently when he talks about his work. And it comes from this word meaning life, and for Moore it sort of means a power and energy, this sort of animation of life that he wants to really charge all of his works with, and in particular his sculpture.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
The exhibition Vitality will take you across the entire estate, which form the grounds on which Moore's former home and his studios where he lived and worked. And in that experience, you will encounter some semi-abstract works that may initially seem surprising or unusual. You will encounter some figurative works, but those that are related to the landscape, related to the natural formations of hills or mountains or caves or boulders. And in all of this work, we'll see that this thread of what Moore felt was so important, this energy, this vitality, is one that connects not only the works to one another in a beautiful way, and hopefully those connections will be revealed as you move through the landscape, but also that they connect very strongly sculpture to the earth, to the landscape, and also to our own human bodies and the way that we navigate the world around us. Moore often talks about this tendency that he has to humanize everything. So to look at mountains and rocks and hillsides and caves, and to see in them the human body and the body, you know, and to sort of imbue that sense of the landscape into his figures, and to relate people and their torsos to tree trunks, for example. And we can see that quite specifically, I guess, in work such as Two-Piece Reclining Figure Points, which is in the exhibition this year, and it's wonderful to have it back here. And this is a work which, you know, individually these two parts of the body look like they're balanced, poised, but they could be sort of unearthed huge rocky boulders or these enlarged pieces of jagged flint. Together, Moore has sort of placed them to look like a reclining figure, but individually they sort of definitely have this earthly landscape quality. And even more vitality is kind of instilled in this work because they have intervening space between these two parts is animated by these points that almost touch but don't quite touch. And this is really more talking about that sort of the human landscape connections that we might all feel somewhere very deep down in our kind of core. What is so nice about this exhibition is that it is all outdoors. So unlike walking into a museum gallery, this is an exhibition that will unfold and reveal itself as you walk through the landscape here, sheep fields, through garden, and hopefully will allow the viewer that wonderful time to reflect and to appreciate what Moore's trying to achieve in his work, this sort of pent-up, vital energy.
Okay, so now I wanted him to be the last one that you're seeing because he was very influenced by similar things that the Cycladic artists were doing. Now, I don't know if you know this. I don't think it said it in this video, but in other videos, he also looked at vertebrae and at bones and looked at how the bones interrelated. And I thought to myself, wait till you see this piece. I'm putting a piece of a Cycladic art piece next to his work, and you'll understand what he's borrowing from so intensely. Look at that piece. Oh, now I wanted you to understand, why did I show you this Cycladic piece at the end? Because most times, you don't see the legs being separate. I did this on purpose. I'm in charge of the lecture. I didn't want you to see this until the end. The nose is still there, but you see the openings between the legs. You see the hands going down, and not this week, but next week, you're going to see a very famous piece of a harp playing Cycladic art piece. Now let's look at these and look at the next one. I just think you learn so much of. Look at that again, the nose and the mouth, and look what he does with the ears. And remember, he's doing a very different base, but the front and the back look very different. Look at this next one. Again, the two figures. We're going to see the harp piece later, but I didn't want to show that today. But when you see that, you'll say, oh my God, that is so much like that. And here he makes the bench and he makes the base all in bronze. Now, the little pieces of his are much more collectible than the big ones, because the big ones, if you've been at the Israel Museum or at Hebrew University or many museums, you'll see the big ones are done with sheet metal of bronze, and they are done by his staff. He had a huge staff, but the little ones he always does by hand. That's all his hand. And look at this last one that I love so much as a figure, and that is based on vertebrae. There's a face in the top. It's like a human body, but the inner pieces are like bones put together. Now let's go to the last page that has videos, and you'll go to the middle video. We saw the first video, go to the second video. And then I'm giving us 5 minutes we're going to look at this.
Sorry, which video? The Cycladic, this one right here?
Yes, yeah, right there. You're amazing, Ari. I love you.
So hold on for a moment. We'll get it set up, and then we'll wrap it up. We have a bunch of questions.
Good, but I hope you don't mind. I took a chance. I was gutsy to show you the Cycladic only in little bits, because I know you wouldn't have looked at the work if I showed it to you the other way first. So I know I have these minutes.
I'm going to share where I think you want. Just tell me if this is correct.
Yeah.
Is this what you're looking for?
Yes. That's the article. I wanted you to see the article, but no, I wanted you to see, oops, yeah, take a look at these. Look at these right next to each other. Go to the next. You see, I wanted you to see a Museum of Cycladic Art. This is put out by them, but look at how these pieces, that's a Brancusi next to a Cycladic piece. Keep going down. Look at that. You see, that's the Brancusi again. That's the Cycladic piece. Keep going down. That's the Modigliani, and that's the, I wanted you to see, there's a whole article on talking about these pieces. Look again here. So these are all pieces that you'll see in the museum. This is put out by the museum. And I'm going to show you, can you go back to the first video from when you announced the show, today's lecture? It showed you, there's a picture on your thing of all the Cycladic pieces in there. And next week you're going to see that video. But Ari, when you put out the piece, you have that whole, the announcement of it here. I have it here. But you see all the pieces in the Cycladic Museum. Here, this is what I wanted them to see, because we're going to see that at the beginning of next week's. Do you see that? I just want you to see how they look all together, because then you'll see bigger pieces, smaller pieces. But anyway, we have like 6 minutes left. I thought we would.
Let's go through a few quick questions, okay?
All right. Yeah.
Where is the Museum of Cycladic Art?
In Athens.
Okay, so we're going to go hopefully see it when we go in our group. And if anybody's there are people in Athens right now. I think Rabbi Einstein's in Athens.
Oh,
they need to go
hello,
see it,
Rabbi.
right?
It's so famous. You ask anyone where it is.
So that's number one. Number two is, I mean, you hinted at this, but and people put it in the notes already, how this compares to the idols that have been found around the world in the Middle East. So
yes.
Can you please draw that connection for us, or is that something you're waiting to do?
Thank you. Yes, this is something I'm fascinated by. So I don't know if all of you, when I was a kid and I heard about the Avos, Abraham's father dealt in this stuff. I think he was going to Greece and getting these idols and selling them back and forth. They were not made for idol worship. They weren't. They were made for, making you feel good about having a baby, or they were about objects of beauty. I have never heard, and maybe I'd love to learn. I don't think anyone prayed to them. They weren't like idols of other groups. And as you saw in every video I've seen, maybe 30 videos, they don't know who made them, and they don't know why exactly they were made. I think they were made very much like African sculptures to be adorning. Oh, when you go to the museum, when you see the jewelry, I didn't even want to touch that. It's breathtaking little jewelry pieces, but they always work with the figure. Next week, I hope you all come back, because we're going to start with a very short video from the Cycladic Museum, because now your brain will be looking at everything else. And that husband and wife also collected that, but we're going to start with that.
And then just for a minute, where are the Cyclades? Do we know why they're called the Cyclades?
They're very small islands near Crete. You know what? I will try and add that to next. I'm going to change next week's lecture a drop and add a picture of that. That will help everybody. And in the museum, when you get in there, it shows you that. I thought it was so obvious that I didn't put it in there.
And why?
Yes, Abraham breaks the idols. Right. Yes.
So, but why is this art created on the Cyclades? And, is this, so, I mean, what you're saying
part of their minhag. It was like, it's like, Ashkenazi food, or if you go to, it was part of their communal thing. Just like if you look at early, I love looking at early Mayan art pieces. I don't know if you know the beautiful Mayan pieces that were done, and the gold that unfortunately the Spanish came and destroyed. There were cultures that really loved the body. And when you look at this, when you go to the museum, please spend a few hours there. You will never forget it, because each one is different, but not that different. And what do I mean by that? It looks like they all have the same teacher, but they all were looking at it in different ways. Do you understand what I mean by that? In other words, you go to an art class and everyone has the same models, but everyone does it a little different. And that's what interests me.
Someone brought up the large monuments on Easter Island.
Yes, I love those. Yes.
And how they reminded them of the art you just showed us.
Yeah, that is true.
So, but I mean, this art really comes from this particular set of islands, and then it's spread out, and then it was kind of rediscovered and became.
Well, no. It never got undiscovered. It was always, Ari, people have loved them for always. An interesting phenomenon. I don't know if you know, he is the Stern family bought a lot of them, and they've been at the Met forever, and now they're being reappropriated, going back to Greece. They were always very popular, but now it's become even more so. They never fell out of fashion. They weren't sold for a lot of money for many generations. There was a private dealer by the name of Marin, who I met through Nessa, and he was obsessed with these pieces, and he realized that they were really valuable and brilliant, and he started dealing in them. Also, Pace Gallery. People have began to realize how important they were and that they were underappreciated.
So in our last few minutes, what are we going to talk about next week?
So next week, we talk about a husband and wife who created this amazing collection, but I'm going to use the first 7 or 8 minutes to actually walk you through Cycladic Museum and not talk about other artists and just look at that, because I want you to look at it as a contemporary artist and then see how influenced you are. Do you understand what I mean, Ari? I wanted to give everyone the chance of seeing how this art has changed so many artists. It's not the typical way to teach, but Ari, as you know, I like doing it my way, and thank God. I want to thank Ari publicly for letting me do the programs the way I like doing them, which is I want you all to feel like an artist and see what all artists see, and then go backwards and then understand and appreciate what it is. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to go by this amazing husband and wife that built a $3 billion collection. I originally was going to compare them to the Barnes collection and the Phillips collection. And Sharon, who helps me do things, said, Toby, that's a 3-hour class. And I'm going, I know, but I want to do it. So one day I would like to do another lecture on places like the Hirshhorn, the Frick, the Phillips, the Barnes, who all were obsessed about collecting and making their collections public.
Okay, well, Emirza Hashem, as they say. We will do many more programs. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this learning about Cycladic art. Some of you may have known it and you got an opportunity to see it in a different way, and many of you probably for the first time had the opportunity to learn about it. I will share lots of background, including maps of Greece. And still the question is fundamental. Why did this art start on these islands? What was special? What was unique? What was about the people?
It'll be the beginning of next week's class. It'll be that.
Okay, it's a teaser.
It's a 3-minute video that I have that says it all. But I didn't want to do that today, Ari. I hope you don't mind.
No, that's fine. Again, for those of you joining me in Greece, we look forward to seeing these things in Greece. And if you're going to Greece on a vacation, it seems a lot of people are going to Athens right now. Go check out the museum. Otherwise, plan a trip. Go see it. And don't forget, Beverly Jacobs curating a show, Santa Ana, California. Be there. I'll send you all.
Thank you all very much for participating. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
Very much so. Thank you. Bye everybody. Shabbat Shalom.